Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome back to That's One Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by David Rios.
Hello.
And Jose Fuentes would normally be with us, but he is currently off tonight. And we are still looking for a permanent third to sit with us full time. So hopefully one of our two will be back with us soon, Angelo or Javier. But for tonight, it'll be the two of us, and we're talking about the art of building discipline and how that relates to making comics. I guess kind of the impetus for this discussion is, I can't remember who exactly said it, if it was, I believe it was Hemingway, but it's very possibly someone else. Said that inspiration is fickle. What really creates works is discipline. So we'll be talking about how you can go about learning what kind of routine you need to build. And it'll probably differ from person to person. Different tools and tactics you can use to implement that routine and how that'll help you in your comic book career. But first, I'll ask David, this week, what have you been reading, watching, playing? What has been your media input for this past week?
Let's see. Nothing new. I kind of just been watching some of the Star Wars Disney Plus series in free time. Just kind of rewatching some things. Reading wise, I've been reading more of the whole Krakoa era stuff.
Yep.
And some of the independent stuff. some of the Mad Cave, things like that. Just some miscellaneous things. Just been a lot of work and things like that. But no time for games. It would have been nice. But howdy, Dustin.
Yeah. That's fair. A moment. I've also been reading some X-Men. I've been reading through the first Reign of X volume. It's on Comixology Unlimited. It went through, and I've now started collecting the manga for Jujutsu Kaisen. Besides just watching the anime, I decided to start collecting the manga. So read through the first volume of that as well. Watching wise, not much besides pro wrestling. Although I do need to watch the next season 2 of Rising Impact that came out recently, so I need to catch up on my golf anime.
There you go.
Yeah. Playing wise, besides just the normal D&D games with friends and people in the area, still just Final Fantasy 14 when I get the time.
You used to play that a lot. I love that game.
Yeah. Besides that, not too much of myself. Mostly it's been catching up on work.
Well, before we jump into the topic, we have to say a shout out to our Wednesday Whammer, Rob Davis. Happy birthday.
Yes.
It is his birthday, and he's always such a great guy. Got to throw that out there.
Nice. And also, congrats to Barb Kilberg on Divinity number 4. So
successful campaign.
Yes. So looking forward to seeing that out soon.
And it's I think it's Twilight Grim number 1 is in the Diamond catalog.
I believe so.
Which is, of course, Rob Davis's work. So double shout out for that.
Yeah. So if you are a frequent Silverline reader and have a friendly friendly neighborhood comic store, go ahead and place a pre-order for Twilight Grim number 1. But yes, speaking of being busy with work and the importance thereof, when it comes to comic books, especially in the independent scene, putting together a work schedule can be challenging and weird at times, because for most of us, this is not our day job. And usually you're balancing this in addition to your day job, your family, any other creative pursuits you might have, plus, hobbies, social life, whatever you choose to pick up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So to make sure that you actually get your comic book done and in the hands of people who want to read it, you need to figure out how you're going to actually set aside the time or create the pattern that allows you to work. And that can look different for everyone. And the key factor to all of this is building some sort of discipline. Essentially just the either the pattern, the mental fortitude to stick to a pattern or a routine that allows you to be creative on sort of a sustainable and repeatable basis. Which is weird that, it's a creative field, especially creative writing, creative arts. There's not any other comics have very little. If you're on the creative side, comics have very little to do with set in stone business practices, but that sort of business understanding of discipline is incredibly important for how weird our creative minds usually work. Because if I was, a free-flowing full-time writer, I would just not leave my bed.
True, so true.
Yeah. So I mentioned before that it usually involves creating or establishing some form of routine that you can stick to sustainably. In previous episodes, I've mentioned that I am if I'm in a writing crunch. I'm usually a once a week writer. Usually, like I'll set aside like several hours on one day a week, and that is my writing day. Some people write every day, and they'll do like a smaller amount of words, only about a couple hundred. I'm more of a write 11 pages one day, write 11 pages the next week, and then edit them the week after, so I can get 22-page script done in 3 weeks. But I do it in like marathon bursts almost. Of course, with coloring and art, it can be a little different. But David, what does your own routine kind of look like? Are you a daily person, or every other day? How much time do you spend on your coloring? Is it like a set, like I have to do so many panels a day, or is it I'm just going to do this for this many hours?
I do more of the set it aside and do it for X amount of time. Usually ends up being gets late in the day and stuff like late at night, not late in the day, late at night, because of the big, most of my 8 to 5 and 8 to 6 or 7 is all a day job and all that. So I got to fit it in as I go and all that. So once I get going on it, I try to stay on it until either my back starts hurting after sitting in, because spend a lot of time leaning forward.
Yeah.
Over the over the tablet, the the Wacom tablet and all that stuff. So it does tend to kind of, I'm not a young spring chicken anymore, but it does tend to put some stress and some wear on the lower back and stuff. So I try to do it as long as I can before that starts to become an issue, and then I'll try and get up and relocate, sit kind of differently, and then hopefully it gets a little better, and then I can come back for a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's always a shoot for trying to be doing it as long as possible, because it's a discipline. It's hard to get yourself, especially I do a lot of computer stuff, IT stuff during the day. So for me, it's like I've just spent the last 8-9 hours in front of a computer doing this, and the motivation to get in front of another computer and do this is a challenge. So,
yeah. I mean, I used to be a daily writer, but I ended up getting a day job in marketing and market writing. So, copywriting. I ended up, had to change because of that, because I found that my brain was too easy for me to get either flustered or to cross my wires going from copywriting to creative writing. So I decided to kind of bite the bullet, take several hours out of my weekend, and say I'm more satisfied if I take 4 to 5 hours out of my weekend and make that creative writing time, as opposed to not getting it done at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially if you're just coming out of your creative writing or art programs in your college, it may not be as much of an issue to you, but 26 onward is a point where sitting in the chair for more than 2 hours can be a struggle.
Yeah.
So I have, you find all the tools of like lower back pillows. I'm, every so often I'll get up and go downstairs and get a cup of coffee.
You mean like these?
Oh yeah. I have my lumbar pillow off to the side.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I don't have my thumb brace with me, but with long sessions of coloring or drawing, are you one of those people that uses like a wrist brace or like a thumb brace for your fingers, your hand?
No, I actually never have, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't had carpal tunnel by now.
Sure.
Because I know a lot of people that I work with that had that have had that and had surgery. It definitely helps with the pen as opposed to the mouse, because you're not doing a lot of this with your wrist, where you're doing a lot more where it's more natural with your
Sure.
with a pencil, so that's helped. But yeah, I've been, like I said, I've been lucky so far that I haven't had to deal with a bout of carpal tunnel types symptoms. So, knock on wood.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, yeah, with writing, that's not so much a thing. I do know. Well, I guess for writing, the equivalent there would be like this thing I have attached to the bottom of my keyboard, where I can like prop my wrists up on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if I'm doing like long sessions of painting, I'll use a wrist brace, just because I've had issues before where I ended up locking my thumb up or getting crunchy.
Well, I know that I've seen some of the stuff with Rob Davis, and I know he uses like compression gloves when he's penciling and stuff. So you'll see him on the Wednesday stream, and he'll have those on sometimes. And so whatever works and whatever helps is always a good thing. So
yeah. It's kind of whatever you can do to make sure you protect your routine. To another part of that is depending on what your schedule looks like, and if you're a daily or like a once a month or once a week creator, like however it looks. I've had to take the additional step of making sure that my writing time is locked in on my Google Calendar.
That's definitely helpful.
Yeah. If you're like a daily person, like you know that like after work and after you have dinner, wherever you can sit down and like illustrate, maybe not as much of a requirement, but if you're a person where like, you're set at once a week and you're going to do several hours, like I'm just going to block off my Saturday morning. This is writing time. No one talk to me.
That's nice. If you have that ability, that's nice. Definitely.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Just gotta beware of the lure of the Final Fantasy calling you, or any of those things.
Yeah, I tell Wayne to that. Like, it is very easy to get distracted when you're working from home, as we often do. So, I've become that person that will like claim a corner in a coffee store for like half their time spent open. Or if it is my Saturday morning or Saturday noon, whatever it is that I'm working, like I'm going to one of our coffee shops and staking out a table, and that's where I live for that time, because I can't be around my Final Fantasy machine.
I know that one. Yeah, definitely can call.
So part of making sure that your routines are sustainable is something that you can keep repeating is understanding your short-term and long-term goals and how to like appropriately set them. And everyone has their own idea of like what makes a good goal, or what makes it like a something that works for them. For some people, they like getting very specific. Some people only work on like very vague goals. Well, like I had mentioned, I want to describe my routine at the top. My short-term goal for each session is going to be 11 pages of script, with my long-term goal being 22 pages done in a month. And if you're a daily person, that might be 1 page or 2 pages a day, as opposed to 11. And figuring out what that equates to in your long-term goal and what your editing time looks like. And sometimes setting your goals can be annoying when you're first starting out, because you actually aren't familiar with your own work pace. And ideally, as you spend more time in your craft, your work pace increases until you do something that decides to just break your brain, because that also happens where for whatever reason you can't figure out what you're doing. I don't know if you ever had that moment where like the colors just stop making sense to you, David, but I feel like as a writer, there's definitely moments where words just stop being real and I have to put down what I'm working on back to it later?
They do. Sometimes it's like you'll be doing it and it's just comes to the point where you just keep trying to do it and do it and do it, and it's just not right, and it just, there's different things. And I kind of want to touch on this a little bit. Is a big thing that I have, a big huge factor that I have is I tend to want to over perfect everything, as far as that. So I will go through and I'll do this, and then I'll do more, and I'll do more, and I'll do more, and and if I sit there and I just say, okay, I'm gonna go do this, I find that I spend a lot of time on something, and at the end of the day, it's like it doesn't seem like a lot's been accomplished because I've just overdone it. And a lot of times, you just sit there and you start, just your mind drifts, you get into it, let's add this little detail here, or maybe I want to push the color a little bit, or let's back up, this needs a little more tweaking, and then the next thing you spent a good amount of time, but you're still only in a portion of a page or whatever, because you're so overdoing it. So it's hard, trying to get set kind of a discipline for yourself for a different way of doing it. Maybe the mindset is, instead of let's do this and see what we can do, we'll just let the thing flow. Sometimes I've had to go through and just say, hey, I gotta get this page done. So let's work on completing the page, and then from maybe a more minimal style, and then we can add things at the end if we want to boost it up a little bit, because the last thing that you want to end up doing is having a page that you're 75% of the way done and you're still tweaking things after a significant amount of time. Whereas if you went through and said, all right, well, I'm going to do more minimal approach on 100, you get to your 100% done as far as the page wise goes, and then it's like from there you can tweak it. But at least at that point, anytime you can walk away and say, the page is done, I can turn this in. And another factor is what you're working on and who you're working with. So if it's a matter of work, you have your penciler, inker, and colors and stuff that you do on Wolf Hunter. So you may have your your colors. It's like, okay, the penciler's done their point, inker's done their point, and it's now in the colorist's hands. And a lot of the time that you've had for it has been used up. So you have a lot of that, and the pressure of this. Okay, we got to get this done and get this done to printers, and or it's going into a Kickstarter. You got all that stuff. So that's another setting of a priority. And a lot of stuff I'm doing here is just like recoloring things that have been out for a while. They're just kind of adding to it. But I know, like, whenever I got put on to do the covers for the Achilles' Landed books, it was like, okay, well, let's turn around and Roland said, all right, well, we got one cover that we're looking at to do for the foil cover. That one needs to be done first, and that one, let's shift the priorities. And I had actually been working on the other cover, so it's like, okay, well, we got to turn this one around quickly, so let's shift all the resources, let's get this done, and then get that in, so that he can they can start the stage of the foil and all that, and then work on the second one, and that prioritized what was there based off of a lot of the deadlines for that. So depending on how your deadlines and your work and you're dealing with, that will also help determine your drive or your determination for doing the stuff as well. Sorry, I let you talk for a while.
This is good. I like it. Yeah. I mean, I kind of hits on like a couple of things I did there, but I guess we'll segue from that into kind of an episode on that. Is like, as you mentioned, we are working in the team, and each person has like their own time dedicated to working on certain things, and work on this together. So one thing that helps in two things that help in ensuring that everyone is like getting their work done, including yourself, are deadlines, but also accountability partners, and these could be members of your team that are helping you there. So I know that I need to get, when my illustrator finishes the issue beforehand, I need to have issue 2 to him already, and he's gonna check in with me on that. And they don't necessarily need to be people who are also on your team. It could be someone on the outside. Like I could, you talk to your partner, talk to your friend, or wherever, and like someone like you say, like, hey, I'm protecting this time on my weekends to write, and kind of establish that relationship that like they should be checking in to make sure, like, hey, did you do your writing time this week? So this could be a thing like with Wolf Hunter. I'll use Dracula actually as an example since I'm working on with Rob Davis.
It's a Rob Davis day.
Yeah. So like it could be a thing where like Rob Davis is letting me know, like, hey, I just finished page 17. I'm getting like I have 5 pages left. Like, how's the script coming? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm at this point or whatever. And that freaking checking in back and forth. It could be one of those things where I talk to my friends and like our normal D&D group. I let them know like I'm working on these days because I'm writing on these days, and then kind of like asking them almost like, hey, can you guys make double check that I'm actually like taking time to work on this and I'm not getting distracted by stuff. And trying to find ways to peer pressure yourself to being productive.
Yep.
And probably goes into finding ways to track progress for comics. Tracking progress is pretty easy because we have panels and pages, and so you can always kind of like, well, I have these new panels left, I have these new pages left, right? When you're like covering a splash page or cover, though, I imagine that can be a little different because that can still be a multi-day project working on just like one splash page or one cover, but you still need to find a way to like track how far along you are and how many more steps you think you have on that process. So I don't know, like when you're writing, if you like when you sit down to do something like that, if you have a thoughts of I'm going to do flats this day, then I'm going to like start shading and then like be finished rendering by this day, or if there's like any thought process how you break that up.
I look a lot at what I need to do, what I need to deliver, and how I feel. If obviously if it's something where you have to deliver something that's finished, for example, right away, and it's like with the cover stuff, it's like, okay, well, we're gonna flat it, we're gonna color it, we're gonna do everything so we can get it in their hands as soon as possible. But when you're doing, like I'm with the recoloring stuff, that all depends on what kind of mood I am in and how creative. When if I'm, if it's been a very taxing day, if I have a blank book, for example, if I'm sitting on a blank set of pages, and I had a really taxing mental day in the first job, then I may want to go and say, all right, well, I'm just going to spend tonight doing flats. That's pretty much just just a trace thing. Your thoughts are throwing in kind of what kind of color scheme that you want, but everything's flat, so you're not playing a lot with highlights, shadows, and stuff like that. So I may get days where I want to just do a bunch of flats ahead of time, and then I get other ones where I'm in a groove and I'm doing a lot of rendering. So I may go back and do days where I have a page, or sometimes I'll open up and I'll have like 3 or 4 pages open, and I will be going through and bouncing between page to page to page, whether it's if there's common elements, like I'll go through and I'll do a particular character's skin tone, because generally I try to slightly alter at least the main characters, their skin tones a little bit, depending on what type of person they are. So if it's like a female like Cheryl in the Demon Tales book, I will do something that's a little more has a little more reddish kind of flush tones in it, where I'll go through and like Champion will have something that's a little more brown in there, but not that much, and I alternate that way. I use a lot of the base, and when I'm doing my flatting, I'll do all my colors in full color. And if I change the scopes and the base on it slightly, then it helps me in selecting when you have, 2 people's skin tones that are next to each other, or, their hands, this person's hand is in front of the other person's face type thing. So I tend to slightly change the colors and stuff like that. And then whenever I do background characters, I tend to kind of put a little more kind of gray washed tones in there. So when I'm doing these multiple pages, a lot of times I will just go through and say, okay, I'm doing Champion, and Champion appears in 2 out of 3 of these pages. So I'll get his skin tones, and I'll go through and do all the skin tones on, however many pages he's in. And then I'll go back and I'll say, all right, well, now I'll do his hair. And I usually, I try to do skin tones, hair, and then I start dealing with the outfits. They're, the main things that are showing up. And for consistency wise, I will go through and, use the highlights and shadows across all those pages. So like I said, sometimes I get the things where, I'm just kind of mentally fried and it's easier to just play around with flats. Or I get other ones where, I'm a little more into it, and it's like, okay, well, I'll do the rendering and I'll render across different pages. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the balance between being mentally fried and being and motivated and inspired, before we move into dealing with burnout, can talk a little bit about there are ways that I mentioned before that inspiration, motivation, they're very fickle. That's why building discipline is kind of the key to making sure stuff gets done. Well, oddly enough, this is going to sound kind of weird now, almost like a backtread, but it's not. There are ways that you can force yourself to get inspired to help build that discipline. Or just finding ways to help keep your creativity flowing. And one of those is why I start shows off the way they do, which is finding ways to consume cool and new media. Usually, it's kind of, there's a statistical average that shows that by ingesting, good works of art in your chosen medium, it encourages you to start creating in that medium as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, in that medium, but typically it's the most statistical crossover. But if you're a creative person, you usually find it's the case that when you read a cool comic, when you watch a cool movie, or something like that, you usually find yourself inspired to start creating in the way that you create. I know this is very much the case for me. If I read a story or something that I really like that is in the same lines of what I'm currently working on, it just makes me want to get back and start creating. I don't know if it's the same thing necessarily for coloring. If it's when you see like a really well done page, or if you see some really good interior work, it kind of just gets you amped to get back in front of your tablet and start coloring again.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, there's some people that I've seen that I like a lot of their work, and I had talked about it before. One of the things that I had looked at was some of Art Germ's artwork, and one of the things that I noticed when watching his, one of his videos was he did a lot of the things from working from the shadows forward. So a lot of things that I normally did was it started out with mid-tones and then highlight and shadow, whereas he was, in this one video I was watching, he put on all his darks and gradually went lighter and lighter until he gets the highlights and all that stuff. And that's something that I said, I kind of got into that, I wanted to see how well it worked and if it worked for me. And when I did the Kalis covers, that's one of the things that I did is I started with those darks and I went forward with the lights. It was a little more challenging in the fact that both the covers were outside in the dark. So I still had to kind of maintain that darkness on it rather than, a bright sunny day type thing. But that was something that I kind of got excited about it when it was, it came to doing it. I'm like, I really want to try this, and I know that there's certain things that I want to do, and I know there's certain things that are you also have to take into account. What type of books you're dealing with, what the editors are, because I don't know if you're familiar with some of the stuff with David Nakayama. If you look at a lot of the coloring and things on the Nakayama stuff, there is a lot of that glossy feel where there's a lot of white highlights, pure white highlights. Look at some of his Catwoman covers and all that stuff. You'll see a lot of really sharp things. But I know that that like with Roland stuff, Roland doesn't like a lot of that, high contrasty stuff like that. He is your perfect, Silver Age. He loves that stuff. So there's a lot of cases of if you start to push a lot of that, really bright white highlights and all that stuff, you'll get a kickback because it's not the type of stuff that that he's doing, and that he likes and all that. So so you have to take that into effect of what you want to do and how you want to do it, based off of what you like to do and what your team likes. Because you as another example, look at your Wolf Hunter book, and there's not a lot of there's a lot of like, I don't want to say it's not flat panels, but there's a lot of like monochrome panels. There's not a lot of bright sharp highlights unless you're trying to really push an element and all that. So it's kind of I don't want to say it's kind of a wash type thing, but there's a lot of subtle details in there and color choices more than rendering style.
That's something that Martin and I talked about, is that we were both fans of Euro comics and kind of especially like the late kind of 90s era stuff, maybe early 2000s, where everything kind of had like a pastel feel to it, almost saying like something almost felt like they had like a felt texturing to it. So we wanted to pursue something like that, and then use colors to be more expressive. And part of that is the fact that Willard as a character is very analytical. He's very explaining what he's thinking, but not necessarily what he's feeling. And so we want to use the colors to kind of get into the emotions of the scene, but then be a little more modern with how the shadows are presented. So instead of having highlights, it kind of does like almost like the opposite of the glossy rendering look, where instead of having a full range, it's almost like as a half range going from pastel to shadow.
Yeah, and I saw some picture, I think it was on the Wednesday show, where it had a character, I think maybe it was from the newer book or something, where they had a suitcase and he put the detail in the suitcase, and it wasn't it was a lot more suggestive, in patterns in the suitcase or briefcase. I think it was a briefcase, actually. Where you had the textures and everything that were applied on it, but it was very loose, not very tight. And that definitely totally intentional in that art style and all that. And if you look at some of the like the Void Rivals and Transformers, the Skybound stuff is they're very much kind of similar in the fact of there's not a lot of high glossy rendering. There's a lot of mood colors and just a different style, a different way of doing it. And we touched on it a little bit on I think show like 2 weeks ago or so, where we were talking about like how would I render something that was like a horror type comic, and a lot of like grays and things like that, not real shiny. And then if you were talking about it, an action, like, okay, well, here's a dingy cave and it's more monotone, mostly gray, little highlight, cool colors, maybe a little bit of warm grays and stuff like that. But then you get the other ones where, okay, all of a sudden you have a firefight, and guys break up and they're getting swarmed by a bunch of vampires, where you're throwing in a lot of bright oranges and even some a little bit of yellow and all that stuff just to highlight the gunfire, where you're setting the mood on your color palette rather than your rendering style. And then you can that's how I would kind of approach that. And then once they got overwhelmed, then and the actual feasting or something like that would happen, that's where I'd kind of shift to like a like a blood red and and things like that, where you kind of get the idea that, all right, these guys have no hope.
Right.
So it's a different rendering style, and it's all in how you do it. And like with the Wolf Hunter, I thought it was well done. I think that Martin is fantastic. He really adapts to a lot of different, from what I've seen on the stuff, a lot of different styles. It was very interesting to see his self-made comic that he did and all that, and the look and feel he did with that. So yeah, there's some good stuff that to play around with on that. Sorry if it sounds like I'm rambling.
No, you're good. I like it. It's all good stuff. Also catching up on the groundwork. Okay. Yeah. I mean, when I'm like been writing, it's also been interesting because like other people, I haven't necessarily worked in the same genre as other people here. I mean, kind of, definitely reading Brent Larson's Kalis helped with Wolf Hunter because we're both, working with military spy stuff, even though his is a little more, supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's more so going through and at the same time reading some stuff from like Jean Le Carre or like a few other different pieces that really kind of made me think about how they were essentially like writing spies and how I could translate that to the comic space. With Dracula, it's interesting because I'm also like reading James Tynion's Dracula as well as the original like book, and seeing where we differ in our approach to it. But he's still a fantastic writer, so I'm still like reading his stuff definitely makes me want to go out and make my own written work. On the opposite end of this is, of course, the dreaded burnout, which can present itself in different ways, which is, it can appear as writer's block, general creator block. You might find yourself procrastinating more than you usually do, or just in general being unable to do the work once you sit down at the table to do it. And usually there are telling signs beforehand. For me, this is usually more brain fog, physical exhaustion, usually a sense of dread whenever I open my calendar. And I part of getting older, I think, is learning how to mitigate that and not work yourself as thin as you perhaps did in college. And also developing methods for recovery or like prevention. Being better about placing your vacations before you burn out as opposed to after, or at least work breaks when you can. Saying like, all right, this week I'm not doing anything besides like the bare minimum. I don't know how that experience has been for you, David, with a few more years in the industry than I have. Also, having worked at Marvel, where I imagine things move at a much different pace than they do here. But what has been your experience with burnout and developing your own plans for prevention and recovery?
Wow. Yeah. Burnout definitely is definitely a big factor. It's a lot of it, like I said, is from the full day and then getting up and going to your second job, basically. I do have a very hard issue with it. I know that when I get overwhelmed, like seriously overwhelmed, I get to a point where my mind starts to shut down. And when my mind shuts down, it's like I can't think, I can't do anything, and sitting here and trying to pound my head against something when I have that shutdown, it's like there's no point. It's just a waste of time even trying to do it. So I try to walk away or do something just to get away from it and kind of try and reset if I can. I know it's something that I started to see actually when I was in college. I started to get on some of the projects. I got a buildup of projects that were due, and I just got completely overwhelmed. And that is definitely something that I have to deal with. So it's very real to me. what we're talking about with the burnout and all that stuff. But sometimes I'm able to just to walk away from it and come back to it. We were talking about some of the influence, some of the things that kind of drive you. I've had points where I've just put music on, and it has to be some kind of a fast pace. I mean, I've kind of had the gambit, where it's like, I just throw on, something hard, fast paced, maybe it's Metallica, or maybe it's, Slipknot, or just something to just kind of just drive and kind of get lost in the music more so than let it overwhelm me. So I try different things to try and improve it. Sometimes it's very difficult though. Like I kind of mentioned today, I'm like a little tired today. So, yeah, it's trying to not let it suck you in, because it will suck you in. And a lot of times my mind will start to wander and focus on what's overwhelming me, and it really sucks me in. It makes me overwhelmed even more and all that stuff. So I try to, try to get away from that as much as possible. And, the music helps, or like I said, walking away and all that helps to just kind of take a breather and come back to it.
Yeah, like I said, I've at a point where thankfully my work has a pretty generous PTL policy. So getting to the point where I realize that like I feel like I'm working myself to the bones. I will set aside kind of like comics and everything else and schedule time as soon as I can, just get away and be away from everything. If I'm like burning out like mid session while working, it is much the same vein of, maybe stepping away from the device, putting on music and just kind of doing whatever, or going down, grabbing coffee and doing like a couple of laps around the block or something, but just doing something to get away from what I have been, sitting in front of for everyone to need.
And you're absolutely right. It's like it's tough to sit there and force yourself to take time or take a vacation or any of that. It's I know that my wife and I just went in and we went to San Diego and Comic-Con, and pretty much that burnt out her time off.
Yeah.
Her paid time off, and I'll tell you that neither one of us got any kind of rest.
Yeah.
So that recharge thing is very difficult to try and do. Even whenever we went on our trip to Illinois, it's like we had to pack a bunch into it. We had a wedding. Went over and actually went into my corporate office, and stuff like that. So it was a matter of, all right, what do we have to do today? What do we have to do tomorrow? And it's like, we don't have a lot of we didn't have a lot of time to just sit there. And I just was talking with my wife earlier about it, where we had, hold on, I got a cat attack here. Where we went up to right outside Yosemite, and there is an area where there's just a stream that goes through, and there are people that are just laying in the stream. And I remember where we were just kicking it, and we were just in the stream, just letting the water go over us. Those were just nothing, no work, nothing, and then it's like, oh, what a great trip that was, and then you go and look at your, your memories, in Facebook, and you realize that was 8 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't remember having a lot of fun time since then, so yeah, that all of that setting time, definitely leads to burnout, where you can only just run hot for so long, and then it's gonna hit. So
yeah. And it almost feels weird talking about, in order to stay motivated or stay disciplined, you need to take breaks, because I feel like culturally we disincentivize breaks to a toxic amount.
it's I don't know, is there some kind of subconscious level that you kind of feel like you don't deserve a break?
Definitely.
Like, I got so much work to do. I can't take time for myself. It's not worth it. I got to get this done.
I feel like Western civilization is so built on the idea of your worth comes from your productivity, that even when it comes to your creative work, that still like is in like our genetic memory, to the point where we feel the need that, like, in order to be a good creator, we have to be constantly productive. Meanwhile, look at George R. R. Martin, who still has not finished book 5, despite having the best-selling fantasy series.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely feel like there is a subconscious level of shame, and like it's both internalized as well as, you can't let people know that you're. You always have to say that you're super busy.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, you're finally getting your friends that are kind of forcing you to come out, and it's Thanksgiving or something like that, and then it's like, well, the last time we did this was Thanksgiving last year, and a lot of your, you're thankfully you have such good friends that are like not. They're not the ones going, well, you obviously don't care about spending time with us, and, so whatever, you have, I know with us, we have, a lot of great friends that really, but we always inevitably, every time we get together, it's like, we need to do this more than, like once a year or something like that. But like you said, with everything and trying to get this stuff done and that stuff, your day job, your second job, and all that stuff, it's, the months just roll by, and and you just get engraved, and you get, again, all leads to burnout. Such a real thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. This has been all of my bullet points on building this one. It's kind of lots of bad. Is there anything that in particular, any notes that you wanted to hit on, or any thoughts that you had, David, you want to talk about?
Well, there was one thought. There was one thought that I've actually been thinking about for a couple of days, and one thing that I wanted to stress was the we all know that the comic book work is not a high paying job or anything, unless you're one of the big people. The thing that I wanted to point out is a lot of the burnout can shift your view on what you're doing, and it can shift your view from having fun to I don't want to necessarily say a burden, but it does tend to kind of, it can potentially suck a lot of the fun out of it if you let it. And if you go through and, it's like, yes, you got commitments and all that stuff. But if you lose the fact of, hey, I'm having fun, I'm playing around with this, then it becomes, it does kind of become a burden. And it's do I really feel like doing that today? Or, that becomes a very real thing. The thing that I just wanted to do is, try to keep it on, kind of focus on the fun aspect of it, as opposed to the, grind of it.
Yeah.
Because if you allow the grind to weigh on you, then a lot of things are going to be like, you're not going to want to do it. It's like, whereas you lose that, hey, I want to throw this out there, what does this do? Experimentation and things like that. And, the fun and getting, done and happy, with, hey, this is cool, and the excitement, they see a lot of the things with the Silverliners and the, the group, and, a lot of with like Facebook, I see a lot of the team members are, either they're pushing, hey, this is going on, oh, hey, I did, like Jose was, promoting the Divinity thing, hey, I did a cover on this, hey, it's not his particular book type thing, but there's a lot of, having fun and, doing the, pushing to help the other creators with their projects. It brings a sense of unity and all that, and that's why I always I always try to say hey, what books do we have? These are like today with the the books in Twilight Grim and all that stuff. It's like there's a lot of good working going on, and a lot of people are very proud of their work, and I like to do that, and that contributes to that fun factor, as opposed to this is just a grind, oh, I don't want to deal with this, or stuff like that. So try to keep your interest in, try to keep making it fun. When it's fun, you want to work on it. When it's fun, the ideas roll. When it's fun, the creativity rolls. When it's just static work, it's just what am I doing to get this done, to get this out type thing. That's where it can become pretty burdensome on it. But that's the main thing that I want to do, is try to keep it fun, enjoy it, and try not to take everything super seriously. When you're creating things and you're posting the work out there, and submitting it for people, and you get commentaries back, concentrate on what positive aspects you can get from it. Even a negative review can produce positive results. So but that's it. That's what just one of the things I wanted to, or the main thing that I wanted to kind of cover, that was along the lines, but kind of outside of the points that you had and all that.
Sure. That's definitely, great points there, and definitely things that need to be kept in mind and considered when they're working in this field, but also really any creative field. Is it for most people, success cannot be defined by the financial outcome or the reviews of it, because that's not the reality for most creatives in most fields. Mm-hmm. You have to define your own version of success and know that that's the goal you're building towards. Mm-hmm. And if you do end up having to, have something that gets optioned by Hollywood, that's, a great byproduct.
Yeah, that's a pleasant bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been That's Everyone's Show on Tuesday. We will be back next week, where we will talk about finding the comic communities. So finding places to get plugged in to have those mutual support networks, whether in person or online, and how to navigate those spaces in a way that is genuine and will get you the most benefit, and hopefully not have you come off as a creep. Well, probably talk a little bit about how that's different, how it's evolved over the years, because even from 2010 to 2020, it's a much different landscape. So, and 2030, it'll probably be different. So we'll be discussing all those different changes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those specific days. We will be back next week, but until that time, make mine Silverline.
Hey, I'm G-Rod. Make mine Silverline. You heard me.